The video is disturbing. James Boyd, a homeless man with 2 knives and a history of mental illness and violence, is surrounded by Albuquerque police officers with guns. After hours of negotiation, he seems to agree to come with them, then turns to pick up his backpack and officers launch a flashbang grenade, followed by shots. New Police Chief Gordon Eden first called the shooting justified, then backed off that assertion. The shooting is now the subject of a federal criminal investigation, and the hacktivist group Anonymous is threatening action against APD on March 30th. Joining us to discuss this evolving story is a line regular, Rob Nikolewski with the New Mexico Watchdog and the Capitol Report. Also returning to the line table, another regular, Laura Sanchez, CEO of the New Mexico Green Chamber of Commerce. We very much welcome back to the table Diane Snyder, Executive Director of the Greater Albuquerque Medical Association, and we have a new line panelist this week. A warm welcome to Richard Rogers, Executive Editor of Santa Fe Monthly. Richard, thanks for joining us. Really appreciate it. Laura, let me start with you. It's been pretty clear now that a turning point has happened for the city following this shooting. But let me concentrate first on our attitude about it as citizens and the attitude of people who are officially in the business of this. Let's start with the Chief of Police here. As we tape this on Thursday afternoon in an evolving story, I just want to ask right off the bat, how is the Chief in a position now to turn this around personally, or is in fact going to have to be somebody else later down the road, in your opinion, that's going to have to be the new chief to turn this around? Could I ask you a stark question right off the top?
Well, that's a tough question to answer at this point, but I will say that I think it's the chief's obligation and the mayor to turn this around right now. I mean, whether that means they're going to be successful at it or not remains to be seen. I think it was the right move for the mayor to come back and be clear about how there weren't any clear answers right now. It was still under investigation, and to sort of roll back the initial reaction that the chief had. I think many of us were surprised, especially if you're an attorney, in listening to the chief immediately say that it was completely justified without having all the facts and maybe even before seeing the video that everybody else was.
What did you make of his citing case law in his very first press conference?
Well, it was, even attorneys, when they're talking about a particular issue, very rarely cite case law when they're addressing something like this. I mean, you want to be attentive to the questions, you want to answer them as fully as you can, and you want to try to, a good spokesperson will make sure that they put their position out there and try to be as responsive as they can be to the community. I thought that was a very either he had been briefed or he clearly felt like like there was enough case law in that case to justify what had happened. If you know anything about and I think one of the stories we read in preparation talked about that particular case. I haven't read it in depth, but my understanding was it was a situation in Tennessee in which a suspect was fleeing from police, a burglary suspect. He was in the process of escaping. He had possibly already committed a crime. Officers felt there was a danger that he would escape, and they used they did use lethal force in that situation. I think the question in this case is, was he actually fleeing? It appears in the video he turned his back, which does not indicate he was fleeing at that point. He seemed to be cooperating, and whether there was actual threat to the officers, it's hard for all of us to see something like that and think that there's a threat. But it happened, we've seen it slow down to the point where, we have time to stop and react. The officers there, I think there's still a question, at least in my mind, and I hope that it will be fully fleshed out whether there was an immediate threat to them from what was happening in that instance. And given the information they may have had about his background, I understand there have been some previous interactions with police.
And that's a fair question, considering they were there for 3 hours. Somebody knew something about his background and his history.
So clearly that communication was happening from dispatch and other sources, and I think that's an important thing that the investigation needs to consider. One of the things that worries me is, we all rush to judgment in this situation, the chief included, and yet we still have to have faith in the police when we need them for something. If there is a real emergency, we cannot stop to second guess whether they'll be using appropriate force or not. That's not our job.
Absolutely. Rob, it's interesting what Laura brings up, that I was at the protest on Tuesday, the march to the police headquarters. It was very interesting to me how much of a cross-section of the city I saw in that protest. This was not some lefty, screaming, yelling thing. A lot of mothers, there were a lot of strollers, there were children, there were kids that came out on their own without parents. I mean, it was really quite extraordinary. Talk about this now, what's happened in our city attitude-wise about our police department and how this all works for you.
Well, I think the big difference in this particular case is the video. I mean, without the video, this becomes a talking point, but it does not become an obsessive thing. And that's what this has become. And the other thing too is that it is whether you come down on the side of the police or come down on the side of the shooting victim here, it's the numbers, it's the statistics. There's 23 people who have been killed in the last 2 years, I believe. So those numbers are the numbers that jump out at you. But the video really drives it home, especially because it looks like Mr. Boyd is ready to walk down after this 5-hour, 3.5-hour standoff, and then someone says, "Do it," and up comes a flashbang. So, to me, you're right. I mean, this isn't just the normal people you would expect to be criticizing the police. You got people like Dan Lewis, city councilman, who's come out against this as well. So this is a big deal. This is not an over-exaggeration.
That's right, Diane,
it's a big deal.
Good to see you again, by the way. It's interesting to me how many, when I scan blogs, a lot of comments in the journal on different stories, very, very vociferous. But what's interesting to me is there are a lot of professional people in our city stepping forward by name, saying this cannot happen anymore. This is it. This is it. Yeah, at all levels of professional life here. Do you sense there's a tipping point here?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
And I think that a couple things. One is I feel like I'm in this quagmire, this nightmare that I can't get out of. I wake up and I go, did I dream that?
Yep.
Was that something I learned? Is it something real, or was that my imagination? And I want it to end. I look at, and then I step back and I rationally say, okay, that video is one brief moment in time. As damning as it is, it's one brief moment in time. They were there, as we know, for over 2-3 hours. We don't know what kind of information about Mr. Boyd that the police were getting. We also don't know what his thinking was, what his training was. And police officers live in a world nowadays that is so much more dangerous than when a lot of them signed on for this. And I know we all understand that they signed on to protect and serve, but they didn't sign on to a world that takes little to no responsibility for our mentally impaired citizens.
Let me hold you there and get Richard in here real quick on that your very point there. Services for mental health folks, that kind of thing. Clearly, part of the big pushback you hear around town is we need to up our services. We need to up these kind of things for homeless folks. Agree, disagree? I'm sure you wouldn't disagree with that, but is that, what do we do first?
I very much agree that we need to do that. That's right. Yeah. My big concern here on this thing, aside from the human tragedy, is that what it's doing to the economy of the city. People are not going to want to visit, and my own situation, I got a call, believe it or not, on Tuesday from a fellow that I hadn't seen for about 20 years from Libya. He was in Libya. He knew all about this shooting. It's all spread around the world. Wow. And Albuquerque's and New Mexico have a bad name because of it. I think that's a real shame that is a real problem and a really big concern. You know,
my heart froze when I went to the BBC site in London, and there it was, right on their front page. I was like, you got to be kidding me. And they said they had 750,000 hits on that YouTube page. We had reported locally 150,000 that day, so it's interesting.
And this is just a few months after that incident with the ban in Deming.
That's right.
Yes.
You know, who was
Not to mention a stop in Taos also.
Yeah, right. But with the one in Deming, though, that was really a civil liberties violation to the nth degree, where where he was violated many times.
That's right. Let me go back to Diane real quick, and then you, Laura. Some community leaders met with DOJ and some of the folks on Wednesday. There was a list of 14 demands. One of them being that the DOJ or someone take over the Albuquerque Police Department. Basically calling for federal receivership in the old term. Is that something?
No,
I think a step too far for you?
That's a step too far for me. Because first of all, I don't think anybody has all the facts. That's why you have a DOJ investigation. Now, if they come out and their findings say this is necessary, then you look at it in a different perspective. But at this point, it's like we're condemning them completely and totally. I think the only few things that we do know is we've got a problem. Right. But how do we fix it? Where did the problem originate? Have we lowered our standards in hiring? Have we not provided enough training? or what's happening. And then what actually happened at each of the incidents, I agree with you, the one down in southwest New Mexico is real challenge, but let's make sure that we have all the facts from an unbiased party doing the investigation. And then I think we as citizens, one of the things, and I think I mentioned it to y'all, is I'm of that age that I grew up in a community, small community, where police officers were the good guys. They wore the white hats. They were along with the preacher and the doctor, and that was where they were. And so this is a very rude thing for us. We want to believe in what we believe in our philosophy, but we keep looking at that video and we're going, well, maybe not.
Exactly right. Laura, real quick to finish up, we've got under 30 seconds here. DOJ and how they either do or do not get involved here. Do we need outside eyes here at this point? Is DOJ the folks to do it?
I think DOJ is in a good position, given that they've already started a form of investigation here, and I think it would be beneficial for the chief and the mayor to include outside voices like DOJ and others to the process. But one thing I'll say is just this entire process has made me think of Fruitvale Station. I know we've talked about Fruitvale Station. There was a movie that was about a shooting that happened in Oakland, in the BART, in the Bay Area Rapid Transit, on New Year's Eve, I think 2010, possibly 2009, I don't remember exactly. But in any event, an unarmed African-American young man was killed by a transit officer. He was unarmed, and it was after a fight on the subway. And he claimed he took out a taser to taser him, and he actually took out his gun and shot him. And it was just such a public outcry.
And claimed to not know the difference.
Claimed it was a mistake. I think there are similarities to that, and then also real differences. I think in this case there was no question that they knew that they were using lethal force in that situation, and whether there was an actual threat, I think, is something that needs to be investigated by a third party.
You think about live ammo, tasers, beanbags, dogs. There's a lot of stuff out there. There's a lot of firepower out there. And to end up with this kind of result, having that much advantage, it just doesn't make sense to people. We'll see where this goes. Coming up, former CIA agent Valerie Plame talks about life after her covert cover was blown and her new career as an author of spy thrillers.